The communication room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Hyun sat at his station, watching the screens that showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. It was late in the night and most people had gone home. Only he and Yoonji remained, monitoring the deep space frequencies as they always did. Hyun yawned and stretched his arms. "Another boring night," he said to Yoonji, who sat 3 stations away from him. Yoonji smiled but didn't look away from her screens. "Boring is good? Boring means nothing is wrong." That was when the signal came. At first it was just a small blip on Hyun's screen. Then another. Then the entire display lit up with incoming data from deep space. The sound of the alert filled the room loud and urgent. "What is that?" Hyun asked, his fingers moving quickly across his keyboard. Yoonji was already standing, walking fast toward his station. "I'm getting it too. It's coming from outside our solar system." They both stared at the screens as the signal grew stronger. It wasn't random noise from space. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was a message and someone was sending it deliberately. "Can you translate it?" Hyun asked. Yoonji's fingers flew across her own keyboard. "The computer is working on it. It's not any language we know, but the pattern suggests it's a distress call." Hyun felt his heart beat faster. In all his years of monitoring space, he had never seen anything like this. Earth had been alone in the universe as far as they knew. Now someone was calling out. The translation came through slowly, words appearing on the screen one by one. Both Hyun and Yoonji read in silence. "To any who can hear this message, we are the Dalari of Veloth Prime. We are under attack. Our cities burn. Our people die. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We are scholars and artists and teachers. We believed the universe was peaceful. We were wrong. The Kravish Dominion has come to our world. They take what they want and destroy what remains. Please, if anyone can hear this, we beg for help. We are dying. Our children are dying. Please help us." The message repeated over and over, the same desperate words. Hyun and Yoonji looked at each other. Neither spoke for a long moment. "We need to wake up the Admiral," Yoonji finally said. Within an hour, the communication room was full of people. Admiral Ji-won stood at the center, reading the translated message on the main screen. Around her, military officers and scientists discussed what this meant. Some were excited. Some were afraid. All of them understood that everything had just changed. "How far away is this signal coming from?" Admiral Ji-won asked. A young officer checked his computer. "Approximately 42 light years, Admiral. The signal has been traveling for 42 years before reaching us." "So this attack happened over 4 decades ago," someone said. "Or it's still happening," another voice added. "We don't know how long their war has lasted." Admiral Ji-won raised her hand and everyone became quiet. "What do we know about these Kravesh?" Dr. Su-young, the head of the xenobiology department, stepped forward. "We've been analyzing other signals we've picked up over the years. The Kravesh Dominion appears to be a large military empire. They've conquered many worlds. From what we can tell, they don't negotiate. They simply take, and the Dalari, a peaceful species. Their broadcasts show art, music, philosophy. They've never developed weapons or military forces. They didn't think they needed them." Admiral Ji-won walked slowly around the room, her hands behind her back. Everyone waited for her to speak. "This changes everything," she finally said. "For centuries we wondered if we were alone. Now we know we're not. We also know that the universe is dangerous. These Dalari reached out for help and we heard them." "Admiral, that signal is 42 years old," an officer said. "For all we know, Veloth Prime is already destroyed. The Dalari might already be gone." "They might be," Admiral Ji-won agreed, "but we won't know unless we go and look." The room erupted in conversation. Some people agreed. Others argued that Earth should stay hidden and safe. The debate went on for hours. In another part of the building, General Minho met with his top commanders. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles on Earth. "If we go to help these aliens, we reveal ourselves to the galaxy," General Minho said. "We don't know what's out there. We could be starting something we can't finish." Commander Seo-hyun, one of his most trusted officers, nodded. "But if we do nothing, we're leaving innocent people to die. Isn't that why we built these ships? To protect those who can't protect themselves?" "We built these ships to protect Earth," General Minho corrected. "Earth is safe," Seo-hyun said. "These Dalari are not," General Minho sighed. He looked at the faces of his commanders, young and old, and he saw the same thing in all of their eyes. They wanted to help. Humans had always been like this, he thought. They couldn't ignore a cry for help, even when helping was dangerous. 3 days later, the United Earth Council made their decision. They would send a fleet to Veloth Prime. It would be humanity's first contact with alien life, and it would be a military operation. Ambassador Doyen addressed the council one last time before the vote. We've spent thousands of years fighting each other on Earth. We've built weapons that could destroy our own world 10 times over. We've learned every way there is to kill and survive. Maybe, just maybe, all of that terrible history happened so we could be ready for this moment. The Dalari need monsters to fight their monsters, and we know how to be monsters when we have to be. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Jiwan stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching through the window as other ships gathered in formation. Humanity was going to war, but not with itself this time. This time, humans would fight for someone else. Captain Tajin, her second-in-command, stood beside her. "Do you think they're still alive?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," Admiral Jiwan answered honestly, "but we're going to find out. And if they are alive, if there's even one Dalari still fighting to survive, then we're going to make sure they know they're not alone anymore." The fleet activated their faster-than-light drives. One by one, the ships disappeared into the darkness of space, heading toward a world 42 light-years away. Heading toward a species that had cried out for help. Heading toward a war that wasn't theirs to fight, but one they chose to fight anyway. Because that was what humans did. Far away, on Veloth Prime, the Dalari didn't know that their message had been heard. They didn't know that help was coming. They only knew that another day had passed and they were still alive, still hiding, still hoping that somewhere in the vast universe, someone cared enough to answer their call. They didn't know that the monsters of Earth were coming, and they didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. The council chamber was the largest room in the United Earth government building. Representatives from every nation sat in curved rows, all facing the center stage where speakers presented their arguments. Today the chamber was completely full. Everyone wanted to hear the debate about the Dalari mission. Ambassador Doyen stood at the podium, his voice calm but firm. "We have the coordinates. We have the ships. We have trained soldiers ready to go. The only question is whether we have the courage to use them." A representative from the Pacific Coalition stood up. "Ambassador, this isn't about courage. It's about wisdom. We're talking about flying halfway across the galaxy to fight in a war we don't understand. What if we lose? What if this Kravesh Dominion decides to follow our ships back to Earth?" Doyen nodded slowly. "Those are valid concerns. But let me ask you this. What kind of species do we want to be? The kind that hides when others cry for help? Or the kind that stands up when standing up is hard?" Another representative spoke. "We've only had faster-than-light travel for 5 years. We're still learning. Maybe we're not ready for this." General Minho, sitting in the military section, stood to speak. He was given permission to approach the podium. When he spoke, his voice was rough and loud enough to fill the entire chamber. "Not ready?" General Minho said. "Humanity has been ready for war since we lived in caves and fought with rocks. We've had 10,000 years of practice. We know strategy. We know tactics. We know how to fight and how to win. If there's one thing humans are ready for, it's this." A younger representative raised her hand. "But General, the Dalari message is 42 years old. They might already be dead. We might arrive to find nothing but ruins." Dr. Su Yung, the xenobiologist, walked to the podium when General Minho finished. She wore her white lab coat and carried a data tablet. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. "I've been studying all the alien signals we've intercepted over the past decade," Dr. Su Yung said. "The Kravesh Dominion doesn't destroy planets quickly. They conquer slowly, taking resources and enslaving populations. Based on their pattern, if they attacked Veloth Prime 42 years ago, there's a good chance the Dalari are still alive. Not thriving, but alive." "Enslaved, you mean?" someone said from the crowd. "Yes," Dr. Su Yung said simply. "Enslaved. Which is why they need help even more." The debate continued for hours. Some argued that Earth should focus on defending itself and building stronger defenses. Others argued that remaining isolated would only delay the inevitable contact with hostile aliens. If the Kravesh could reach Veloth Prime, they could eventually reach Earth. During a break, Admiral Jiwan met privately with her senior officers in a small conference room. Captain Tajin was there, along with Commander Seo-hyun and Lieutenant Yuna. "What's the mood in the chamber?" Tajin asked. "Split down the middle," Admiral Jiwan said. Half want to help. Half want to hide? We can't hide forever, Lieutenant Yuna said. She was young but had proven herself brilliant at tactical planning. If the Kravesh are as powerful as we think, they'll eventually expand toward our region of space. Better to stop them now while they don't know we exist. Commander Seo-hyun leaned back in her chair. I've been running simulations. If we're going to do this, we need to hit them hard and fast. No holding back. The Kravesh have conquered 17 star systems. They know how to fight. We need to show them something they've never seen before. What do you suggest? Admiral Ji-won asked. Total war, Seo-hyun said quietly. Not the polite kind of war where you follow rules and show mercy. The kind of war humanity invented. Psychological warfare. Unpredictable tactics. Make them afraid of us. Captain Taejin frowned. That could make us look like the bad guys. We are the bad guys, Seo-hyun said. To the Kravesh, we will be the monsters that appear from nowhere and ruin their perfect conquest. And that's exactly what we need to be. Admiral Ji-won considered this. The Dalari asked for help, not for new conquerors. We need to remember that, of course, Seo-hyun agreed. But the Kravesh don't need to know we're the good guys until after they've lost. When the council reconvened, Ambassador Doyun presented the final argument. He stood at the center of the chamber and spoke without notes, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. I know many of you are afraid, Doyun said. I'm afraid too. We're about to step into a larger universe and we don't know what we'll find there. But fear is not a reason to abandon our principles. Humanity has always been at its best when we defend others. Yes, we've fought among ourselves. Yes, we've made terrible mistakes. But we've also shown incredible courage and compassion. He paused and looked around the room. The Dalari didn't ask for much. They just asked not to be forgotten. They asked for someone to care. And their message traveled 42 years through empty space to reach us. That's 42 years of hoping someone would hear. 42 years of not giving up. Can we really look at ourselves and say we heard them and chose to do nothing? The chamber was silent. I propose we send the fleet, Doyun continued. Not as conquerors, not as another empire, but as defenders. We show the galaxy that humanity stands with the weak against the strong. We show them that when you cry for help, Earth answers. Another representative stood. And if we die trying? If the Kravesh destroy our fleet? Doyun smiled sadly. Then we die knowing we tried to do the right thing. That's more than most species can say. The vote was called. Representatives entered their choices into their consoles. The results appeared on the main screen. 78% in favor of the mission. 22% against. The mission was approved. General Minho immediately began organizing the military fleet. He chose his best ships and his best soldiers. This wouldn't be a small force. Earth was sending 40 warships, 5,000 troops, and enough firepower to level a continent. Are you sure about this? One of his junior officers asked. General Minho watched the ships being prepared in the orbital shipyards through his office window. No, he said honestly. But I'm not sure about anything anymore. What I do know is that we're good at fighting. If anyone can help the Dalari, it's us. In her quarters, Lieutenant Yuna prepared her personal things. She was assigned to the flagship as the tactical officer. Her mother called her on the video screen. Do you have to go? Her mother asked, her eyes red from crying. Yes, Yuna said gently. This is what I trained for, Mom. But it's so dangerous. And so far from home, Yuna smiled. Someone has to go. And I'm good at what I do. The Admiral needs people she can trust. Promise me you'll come back, Yuna hesitated. She didn't like making promises she couldn't keep. I promise I'll try, she said instead. All across Earth, similar conversations happened. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Engineers made final checks on the ships. Scientists packed their equipment. Everyone understood this was different from any mission humanity had ever attempted. Admiral Ji-won stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, watching her crew work. These people had volunteered for this mission. Every single one could have stayed home. But they chose to go. Captain Taejin approached her. All ships report ready, Admiral. Then let's go keep a promise, Admiral Ji-won said. Someone out there asked for help. Time to answer. The fleet departed from Earth orbit in perfect formation. 40 ships, each one built for war, each one carrying the hope of a species that still believed in helping others. Below them, Earth watched and waited. Above them, the stars beckoned. The journey to Veloth Prime took 3 weeks. The human fleet traveled through the vast emptiness between stars, moving faster than light itself. Inside the ship, soldiers trained and prepared. They didn't know what they would find when they arrived. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral G1 reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Dr. Su-Yung had been analyzing all the data they collected on the Krevesh Dominion during their journey. "What can you tell me about our enemy?" Admiral G1 asked. Dr. Su-Yung pulled up images on the main screen. They showed large angular ships covered in dark armor. "The Krevesh are bigger than us. Their soldiers are stronger. Their ships have powerful shields and weapons. So they're better than us," Lieutenant Yuna asked from her tactical station. "In direct combat, probably yes," Dr. Su-Yung admitted. "But they fight the same way every time. They're predictable. They believe in their own superiority so much that they don't adapt well to new threats." Captain Taejin studied the images. "They've never lost before. They don't know what losing feels like." "Then we're going to teach them," Admiral Jiwan said quietly. When the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Veloth Prime system, they saw it immediately. A Krevesh blockade surrounded the planet. 15 large warships orbited the world, preventing anyone from leaving or entering. "Scan the planet," Admiral Jiwan ordered. The sensors worked quickly. The results made everyone on the bridge feel sick. The Dalari cities were damaged but not destroyed. That meant the Krevesh were still occupying the planet, still taking what they wanted. The distress call had been real and it was still happening. "Admiral, the Krevesh fleet is hailing us," the communications officer said. "Put it on screen." The image that appeared was frightening. The Krevesh commander was massive, with dark scales and eyes that looked like black stones. He wore armor that seemed built into his body. When he spoke, his voice was deep and harsh. "Unknown ships, you have entered Krevesh territory. Identify yourselves and depart immediately." Admiral G1 stood from her chair. She made sure her uniform was straight. Then she looked directly at the Krevesh commander. "I am Admiral G1 of Earth. We received a distress call from the Dalari people. We've come to help them." The Krevesh commander seemed surprised for a moment. Then he laughed, a terrible sound. "Earth? We have no record of Earth. You are an insignificant species from an insignificant world. The Dalari belong to the Krevesh Dominion now. Depart before we add your ships to our fleet as wreckage." "We're not leaving," Admiral G1 said calmly. "Then you are fools. We are 15 ships. You are 40. But one Krevesh vessel equals 10 of any other species. Do you really wish to fight us?" Admiral G1 smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Absolutely." She cut the transmission before the Krevesh could respond. "All ships, battle stations. Yuna, deploy our plan." Lieutenant Yuna's fingers flew across her console. "Yes, Admiral." Implementing Tactical Pattern Omega. The human ships spread out in a formation the Krevesh had never seen before. Instead of creating a battle line like most species, the human vessels scattered in seemingly random directions. Some went up, some went down, some moved sideways. It looked chaotic. The Krevesh commander, Admiral Zorvik, watched from his flagship with confusion. "What are they doing? Do they not know how to form a proper battle line?" His tactical officer studied the human movements. "I don't understand their strategy, Admiral. They're exposing themselves to crossfire. Then we'll destroy them easily," Zorvik said. "All ships, attack formation. Show these humans why the Krevesh Dominion is feared across 17 systems." The Krevesh ships moved into their traditional formation, creating a wall of vessels that would allow them to concentrate their firepower. It was a formation that had won them hundreds of battles. It was exactly what the humans wanted them to do. "Now," Admiral G1 said quietly, the human ships suddenly changed direction. They moved with incredible speed and precision, no longer scattered but flowing like water around the Krevesh formation. Small fighters launched from the bigger ships, filling the space with dozens of fast-moving targets. The Krevesh fired their weapons, massive energy beams that could cut through normal armor easily. But the human ships were already moving, dodging and weaving in patterns that seemed impossible. "They're too fast," the Krevesh tactical officer shouted. Then the human ships started firing back. Their weapons were different from anything the Krevesh had seen. Missiles that changed direction in mid-flight. Energy weapons that pulsed instead of firing in steady beams. Projectile weapons that shot metal at incredible speeds. One Krevesh ship took a hit to its engines. Then another was struck in its weapon systems. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Krevesh ships completely. They were disabling them piece by piece. "Regroup." Admiral Zorvik ordered. "Fall back to defensive positions." But the human ships were everywhere now. They came from above and below, from the sides, even from behind. They moved like they were fighting in 3 dimensions, while the Kravesh only thought in 2. Captain Tyjan commanded a group of 5 human ships. He had been a fighter pilot before becoming a captain, and he still thought like one. He led his ships in a diving attack toward a Kravesh vessel's weak point, the area where the shields were thinnest. "Remember," Tyjan said to his squadron, "we're not here to be heroes. We're here to win. Hit them where it hurts and get out." His ships fired in perfect coordination. The Kravesh vessel's shields flickered and failed. Its weapon systems went dark. The ship was still intact, but it could no longer fight. On the planet below, a Dalari named Mirena watched the battle through her broken window. She had been hiding in her damaged home for years, surviving on scraps and hope. When the Kravesh invaded, they had killed her family. She had nothing left except the will to survive another day. Now, looking up at the sky, she saw explosions and light. She saw ships moving in ways Kravesh ships never moved. She didn't know who was fighting the Kravesh. She only knew that someone was. Tears ran down her face. "Someone came," she whispered. Someone actually came. The battle lasted 6 hours. In space combat, that was a very long time. The Kravesh kept trying to use their traditional tactics, but nothing worked against the humans. Every time they formed a strong defense, the humans would attack from a new angle. Every time they tried to concentrate their fire, the human ships would scatter and regroup. Finally, Admiral Zorvik admitted the truth. He was losing. He had never lost before in his entire military career. The Kravesh Dominion had never retreated from a battle in 300 years. "All ships withdraw to hyperspace," he ordered. His tactical officer stared at him. "Admiral, we're retreating?" "We're withdrawing to regroup," Zorvik corrected, though everyone knew it was the same thing. "We need to report this to the Empress. She must know about these humans." 3 Kravesh ships had been completely destroyed. 7 more were badly damaged and limping away. The remaining 5, including Zorvik's flagship, jumped into hyperspace and disappeared. The human fleet held their position. They had lost no ships. Some had damage and several fighters had been destroyed, but the fleet was mostly intact. On the Indomitable Bridge, everyone was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Soon the entire bridge was cheering. Admiral Jiwan raised her hand for quiet. "We won the first battle. But this war isn't over. Secure the system and prepare landing teams. We need to make contact with the Dalari and let them know they're safe now." Lieutenant Yuna was already scanning the planet. "Admiral, I'm detecting Dalari life signs all over the planet. Millions of them. They're in hiding, but they're alive." "Send a message on all frequencies," Admiral Jiwan ordered. "Tell them help has arrived from Earth. Tell them they're not alone anymore." The message was sent. On Veloth Prime, Dalari, who had been hiding for decades, slowly emerged from their shelters. They looked at the sky and saw human ships where Kravesh ships had been. Mirena stood outside her home, crying and laughing at the same time. Other Dalari joined her, all of them looking up, all of them hardly believing what had happened. They didn't know who these humans were. They didn't know what Earth was like. But they knew one thing for certain. Their prayers had been answered, and salvation had come in the form of dark ships and fierce warriors. The human landing ships descended through Veloth Prime's atmosphere like falling stars. Inside one of them, Sergeant Kyungmin checked his equipment one more time. Around him, 20 soldiers did the same. They wore armor that looked aggressive and intimidating, covered in dark plates and carrying weapons that seemed too large. "Remember," Kyungmin said to his team, "we're here to help civilians. These people have been through hell. Don't scare them more than we already do." A young soldier named Heejin, who served as their combat medic, spoke up. "Sergeant, have you seen what we look like? We look like soldiers. They might be more afraid of us than the Kravesh." "Then we prove them wrong," Kyungmin said. "Actions speak louder than appearances." The landing ship touched down in what used to be a city square. Now it was just broken buildings and empty streets. The rear door opened, and the soldiers stepped out carefully, weapons ready but pointed down. At first, nothing moved. The city seemed completely empty. Then slowly, very slowly, Dalari began to appear from doorways and ruined buildings. They were thin and looked tired, with large eyes that held both fear and hope. The Dalari looked nothing like humans. They were taller and thinner, with skin that had a slight blue tint. Their faces were gentle, with large eyes designed for seeing in low light. They wore simple clothes that were torn and dirty. Mirena was among the first to approach the humans. She walked forward slowly, her hands raised to show she held no weapons. When she got close enough, she saw the human sergeant remove his helmet. Kyungmin's face was probably meant to be reassuring, but he knew how humans looked to other species. Predator eyes facing forward, strong jaw, expression that could seem aggressive even when trying to smile, but he smiled anyway. "We're from Earth," Kyungmin said slowly, hoping his translator device was working properly. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." Mirena stared at him for a long moment. Then she started crying. Other Dalari began crying too. Some fell to their knees. Not from fear, but from relief so strong it overwhelmed them. "You came," Mirena said through her tears. "After so many years, someone finally came." Heejin stepped forward, her medical bag already in her hands. "Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" "We're all hurt," Mirena said. "But we're alive. That's more than we thought possible." As the soldiers began helping the Dalari, more humans landed across the planet. They brought food, medicine, and supplies. They set up temporary shelters and medical stations. The Dalari watched in amazement as these strange aliens worked with efficiency and purpose. In the capital city, a Dalari historian named Telnor was given access to the human ship's database. Admiral G1 had approved it, believing the Dalari should know who had come to save them. Telnor spent hours reading about Earth and its history. What he found horrified him. Telnor called for a meeting with Mirena and other Dalari leaders who had survived. They gathered in a human medical tent where a holographic display showed information about Earth. "I've been reading about our rescuers," Telnor said, his voice shaking. "I think you all need to see this." He activated the display. It showed Earth's history, thousands of years of it. Every page seemed to contain war. The humans had fought with stones, then bronze, then iron, then steel. They invented gunpowder and used it to kill each other more efficiently. They built machines of war. They dropped bombs that could destroy entire cities in seconds. "They've been fighting for their entire history," Telnor said. "They've never known true peace. Every generation of humans has experienced war. It's in their culture, their language, their very nature." Mirena stared at the images. One showed human soldiers in ancient times. Another showed modern humans with weapons that looked terrifyingly advanced. "But they came to help us," she said quietly. "Did they?" another Dalari asked. "Or did they come because they wanted a new war to fight?" Telnor pulled up more information. "Look at this. Humans have a saying, 'War is hell.' They know how terrible it is. But they also have thousands of words for different types of warriors, different types of battles, different strategies for killing. They study war the way we study art. They created something called nuclear weapons," another Dalari said, reading the data with growing horror. "Weapons that can poison entire planets. And they used them. On themselves. On their own kind." The group fell silent. They had asked the universe for help, and the universe had sent them monsters who fought other monsters. Captain Taejin entered the tent, not knowing he was interrupting this meeting. When he saw the Dalari looking at Earth's history, he understood immediately what was happening. "You're learning about us," he said simply. Mirena looked at him. "Your people have been at war for thousands of years." "Yes," Taejin said. He didn't try to deny it or explain it away. "You've killed billions of your own kind." "Yes." "You built weapons that could destroy your entire planet." "Yes." Mirena's voice was barely a whisper. "What kind of species does that?" Taejin was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up a chair and sat down facing the Dalari directly. "A species that knows how to survive. A species that learned the hard way that the universe isn't kind. We didn't want to be warriors. We wanted to be scholars like you, artists like you. But every time we tried to be peaceful, someone would attack us. Some other human tribe, some other nation. So we learned to fight back. And we got very, very good at it." You're proud of it, Telner said, and it sounded like an accusation. No, Tajin said firmly. We're not proud of our wars. We're ashamed of them, but we're also grateful for the lessons they taught us, because those lessons let us come here and save you. A young Dalari who had been listening spoke up. Why did you come? You could have stayed safe on Earth. Why risk yourselves for strangers? Tajin smiled sadly. Because we know what it's like to be helpless. We know what it's like to watch our people die and be unable to stop it. And we decided a long time ago that if we ever had the power to help others, we would, even if it's dangerous, even if it costs us everything. Outside the tent, Sergeant Kyungmin and his team were helping Dalari children. Heejin had set up a small medical station and was treating injuries and malnutrition. The children were initially afraid of the humans, but Heejin had a gentle way about her that slowly won them over. One small Dalari child, no more than 5 years old by their appearance, approached Heejin carefully. The child held out a broken toy, some kind of stuffed animal that had lost most of its filling. Can you fix it? The child asked in broken Galactic standard language. Heejin took the toy gently. She pulled out a small sewing kit she kept in her personal bag, not her medical bag. For the next 10 minutes, while other soldiers stood guard and worked on bigger tasks, Heejin carefully repaired the stuffed toy. She even found some material to stuff it with so it looked full again. When she handed it back, the child hugged the toy and then, surprisingly, hugged Heejin's leg. The small Dalari child looked up at the human soldier and smiled. Kyungmin watched this scene and thought about what his commander had told him before the mission. We look like monsters, the commander had said, so we need to act like heroes. That night, Jinwoo, a human pilot, sat on the wing of his fighter craft, looking at the stars. A Dalari approached him. It was Telner, the historian. May I join you? Telner asked. Sure, Jinwoo said, making room on the wing. They sat in silence for a while. Then Telner spoke. I've been reading about your wars. Your history is filled with so much death. Yeah, Jinwoo said. It is. How do you live with that? Knowing what your species has done? Jinwoo thought carefully before answering. We remember it. We teach it to our children not so they'll repeat our mistakes, but so they'll understand the cost of violence. Every human grows up learning about our wars. We make sure we never forget how terrible they were. But you still fight. When we have to, yes, but there's a difference now. We used to fight each other for land, resources, pride, stupid reasons. Now when we fight, it's to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's not the same thing. Telner looked at this human pilot, this warrior who fought in a machine designed only for destruction, and saw something he didn't expect. He saw someone who carried a great weight, who understood the cost of what he did. You're not monsters, Telner said quietly. No, Jinwoo agreed. But we can be when we need to be. And right now, the Kravesh need to face monsters. That's why you needed us. Far above the planet, Admiral Jiwan received the first reports from the ground teams. The Dalari were malnourished but alive. Their cities were damaged but could be repaired. Most importantly, they had not lost hope. They had kept fighting in their own way, surviving day by day, believing that help would eventually come. The Kravesh will return, Lieutenant Yuna said. This defeat will make them angry. Let them be angry, Admiral Jiwan said. Anger makes people make mistakes, and we're very good at taking advantage of mistakes. News of the Kravesh defeat traveled through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Species that had been conquered years ago heard the story and could barely believe it. The mighty Kravesh Dominion, which had never lost a battle in 3 centuries, had been beaten by an unknown species called humans. In the throne room of the Kravesh homeworld, Empress Vindra listened to Admiral Zorvik's report with growing rage. She was massive even by Kravesh standards, with scars from hundreds of battles covering her dark-scaled skin. She had ruled the Dominion for 50 years and had never known defeat. You retreated, she said, her voice cold and dangerous. Admiral Zorvik knelt before her. My Empress, these humans fight unlike any species we've encountered. They don't follow proper military doctrine. They use chaotic tactics. They attack from impossible angles. So you ran away from them. I withdrew to report and request reinforcements, my Empress. Empress Vindra stood from her throne. The Kravish Dominion does not lose battles to primitive species. We will mobilize the full fleet. Every ship, every soldier. We will go to Veloth Prime and show these humans why the galaxy fears us. On Veloth Prime, humans continued helping the Dalari rebuild, but they also prepared for the inevitable counterattack. Commander Seo-hyun worked around the clock, developing new defensive strategies. They'll come back with everything they have, Seo-hyun told her team. We embarrassed them. They won't make the same mistakes twice. A young tactical officer asked, Can we win against their full fleet? Probably not, Seo-hyun said honestly. If they bring hundreds of ships, we'll be outnumbered 20-1. But we don't need to win every battle. We just need to make them hurt badly enough that they decide it's not worth it. Engineer Dong-hyun had been examining captured Kravesh technology from the damaged ships. He called Seo-hyun to his workshop. Commander, you need to see this. Dong-hyun showed her a Kravesh weapon system. Look at how they build their technology. It's advanced, but it's also standardized. Every ship uses the same systems, the same frequencies, the same coding. Which means, Seo-hyun asked, which means if we can hack one ship, we can potentially affect all of them. Dong-hyun smiled. The Kravesh are so confident in their superiority that they never considered someone might turn their own weapons against them. Seo-hyun understood immediately. We need to test this. Can you create a virus that targets their systems? Give me 3 days, Dong-hyun said. While the humans prepared, the Dalari were changing too. A resistance leader named Kessian gathered a group of young Dalari who wanted to fight back. For decades, the Dalari had been pacifists. They had never even conceived of fighting the Kravesh. But watching the humans, they began to understand something important. Kessian met with Sergeant Kyungmin in a cleared area that was being used as a training ground. Will you teach us? Kessian asked. Teach you what? Kyungmin asked. How to fight, how to defend ourselves. We don't want to be helpless anymore. Kyungmin studied the Dalari carefully. Fighting isn't something you learn in a few days. It takes years of training. Then teach us what you can in the time we have, Kessian insisted. When the Kravesh return, we want to stand beside you, not hide behind you. Kyungmin nodded slowly. All right? But understand this. Fighting means you might die. It means you'll do things that will haunt you later. Are you sure you want this? We've been dying for decades without fighting back, Kessian said. At least this way, we'll die with dignity. The training began. Kyungmin taught the Dalari basic combat techniques, how to use weapons, how to move as a unit. The Dalari were not natural warriors. Their bodies weren't built for fighting like human bodies were. But they learned with desperate determination. Heejin worked with the Dalari medical personnel, teaching them human combat medicine. In war, you can't always save everyone, she explained gently. You have to prioritize. Save the ones you can save. Don't waste time on the ones you can't. It was a harsh lesson, and the Dalari doctors struggled with it. Their entire culture was based on preserving life. The idea of choosing who lived and who died went against everything they believed. I know it's hard, Heejin said. It's hard for us too. But this is reality. In war, you make impossible choices. We're trying to teach you so fewer of your people die. 3 weeks after the first battle, the Kravesh returned. This time, they brought not 15 ships, but 200. The largest fleet they had ever assembled. Empress Vindra commanded it personally from her flagship, a massive vessel 3 times larger than any other ship in space. On the Indomitable, alarms blared as sensors detected the approaching fleet. Admiral Ji-won looked at the display and felt her heart sink. 200 ships against 40. Those were terrible odds even for humanity. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. Send word to the ground forces. Tell them to prepare for orbital bombardment. Lieutenant Yuna was already calculating attack vectors. Admiral, they're approaching in a standard formation. They're not taking any chances this time. Good, Admiral Ji-won said. Let them be confident. Confidence leads to mistakes. Captain Taijin stood beside her. We can't beat them in a straight fight, Admiral. No, we can't, she agreed. So we won't fight them straight. We'll fight them like humans. The Kravesh fleet entered weapons range. Empress Vindra opened a communication channel. Her image appeared on every human ship's screen. She was terrifying to look at, huge and covered in battle scars, her eyes burning with rage. Humans of Earth, Vindra said. You have interfered with the Kravesh Dominion. You have destroyed our ships and embarrassed our warriors. For this, you will be annihilated. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick. Admiral Jiwan stood before her own camera, making sure her expression showed no fear. Empress Vindra, we rejected your threats before and we reject them again. The Dalari are under Earth's protection. If you want them, you'll have to go through us. Vindra laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. With pleasure, the communication cut off. The Kravish fleet opened fire with every weapon they had. Space lit up with energy beams and missiles. It looked like a storm of destruction heading toward the human fleet. Now, Admiral Jiwan shouted. The human ships scattered immediately, moving in different directions with incredible speed. They had learned from the first battle. This time they moved even faster, even more unpredictably. But the Kravesh had learned too. They spread their formation, trying to surround the human vessels. For every trick the humans used, the Kravesh had a counter. The battle was more even than before. Human ships started taking damage. The Indomitable was hit by an energy beam that tore through its shields. Alarms sounded across the bridge. Hull breach on deck 7. Someone shouted, seal it. Admiral Jiwan ordered. Keep fighting. On the planet below, Sergeant Kyungmin gathered his forces, both human and Dalari. They're going to try to land troops, he said. We need to defend the population centers. Kessian and his Dalari fighters stood among the human soldiers, holding weapons they had barely learned to use. They were terrified, but they stood firm. Remember what I taught you, Kyungmin said to the Dalari. Stay together. Watch each other's backs. And don't try to be heroes. Heroes die quickly. Survivors win wars. The first Kravesh landing ships broke through the orbital battle and descended toward the planet. They were massive troop carriers, each one holding hundreds of Kravesh soldiers. Here they come, a human soldier said. Kyungmin raised his weapon. Make them pay for every meter of ground. The Kravesh soldiers that emerged from the landing ships were huge, nearly 8 feet tall and covered in heavy armor. They carried weapons that could punch through walls. They had expected to face weak Dalari civilians. Instead, they faced human soldiers and armed Dalari working together. The humans used guerrilla tactics, hitting fast and disappearing. The Dalari, despite their fear, followed the human example. They used their knowledge of the city to set traps and ambushes. In space, the battle continued. The human fleet was taking heavy damage, but engineer Donghyun's virus was ready. He uploaded it into a drone and sent it toward a damaged Kravesh ship that still had active systems. Please work, Donghyun whispered. The drone reached the Kravesh ship and connected. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly 20 Kravesh ships lost power. Their weapons went offline. Their shields dropped. It worked, Donghyun shouted. The human fleet immediately concentrated their fire on the disabled ships. In minutes, they had destroyed 10 Kravesh vessels and damaged 10 more. Empress Vindra saw what was happening and realized these humans were more dangerous than she thought. They didn't just fight with weapons. They fought with intelligence and creativity. The battle had been raging for 12 hours. Both sides were exhausted, but neither would retreat. The human fleet had been reduced from 40 ships to 23. The Kravesh had lost 50 vessels, but still outnumbered the humans 5-1. Admiral Jiwan studied the tactical display with tired eyes. Her ship, the Indomitable, had taken severe damage. Half her crew was working on repairs while the other half kept fighting. Around her, the bridge showed signs of the brutal combat. Broken consoles, scorch marks, the smell of smoke and burned circuits. How many ships can still fight effectively? She asked. Lieutenant Yuna checked her status board. 15, Admiral. The others are too damaged. They can barely maintain shields. Captain Taejin leaned against his station, a bandage wrapped around his head from when an explosion had thrown him against a wall. We're losing, Admiral. We need to consider retreat. We retreat and the Dalari die, Admiral Jiwan said simply. Everything we've done becomes meaningless. If we die here, we can't help anyone, Taejin argued, though his voice showed he didn't really believe in running either. Admiral Jiwan was about to respond when Vice Admiral Junho's face appeared on her screen. Juno commanded a group of 5 heavily damaged ships at the edge of the battle. Admiral Jiwan, I have an idea, Junho said, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. Junho explained his plan. As Admiral Jiwan listened, her face went pale. Junho, that's suicide. You and everyone with you will die. Maybe, Junho said with a slight smile, but we're dead anyway if this continues. At least this way our deaths mean something. He paused. My ships are too damaged to make it home. We all know it. Let us do this. Let us make a difference. Admiral G1 closed her eyes for a moment. This was the hardest part of command, making the choice to let people sacrifice themselves. Are your crews volunteers? Every single one, Junho confirmed. We took a vote. It was unanimous. Then you have authorization, Admiral G1 said quietly. May you find peace among the stars. And may Earth remember we tried, Junho replied. His transmission ended. Admiral G1 watched on her screen as Junho's 5 damaged ships changed course. They accelerated directly toward the center of the Kravesh fleet, toward Empress Vindra's massive flagship. The Kravesh saw them coming and fired everything they had at the approaching human vessels. One ship exploded, then another. But the remaining 3 kept coming, faster and faster, approaching relativistic speeds. Specialist Hana was on one of those ships. She was only 23 years old, fresh from the academy, and this was her first combat mission. She sat at her engineering station, keeping the engines running at maximum power despite all the damage. 30 seconds to impact, the ship's captain announced calmly. Hana thought about her family back on Earth. Her parents, her younger brother. She had written them letters before the mission just in case. Now she was glad she had. It was an honor serving with you all, the captain said to his crew. The honor was ours, sir, Hana replied, speaking for everyone. The 3 human ships hit the Kravesh formation at incredible speed. When objects traveling that fast collide with other objects, the result is like small nuclear explosions. The first ship struck a Kravesh destroyer, and both vessels were vaporized instantly. The explosion damaged 5 nearby Kravesh ships. The second ship hit 2 Kravesh vessels that were flying close together. The kinetic energy tore through their shields like they didn't exist. Metal and fire bloomed in space. The third ship, the one carrying Hana, struck Empress Vindra's flagship directly in its engine section. The massive Kravesh vessel shuddered. Its shields failed. Its engines exploded. The flagship that had led the Kravesh Dominion to victory for 50 years began to break apart. Empress Vindra felt her ship dying around her. She was thrown from her command chair as another explosion rocked the vessel. Her officers were shouting, but she could barely hear them over the alarms. Empress, we need to evacuate, her second-in-command shouted. Vindra looked at the view screen showing the battle. She saw her fleet in disarray. She saw human ships battered but still fighting, pressing their advantage. She saw something she had never seen before. The Kravesh Dominion losing. All ships, she commanded, her voice still strong despite the chaos. Retreat. Withdraw from Veloth Prime. We will regroup and return. But Empress, that's an order, Vindra roared. Retreat now. The Kravesh fleet began to pull back. Some ships grabbed survivors from damaged vessels. Others simply activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared. Within minutes, the great Kravesh armada was gone, leaving behind debris and damaged ships that couldn't escape. On the bridge of the Indomitable, everyone stared at the view screen in disbelief. The Kravesh were running. They had won. Someone started crying. Then someone else laughed, a sound halfway between joy and hysteria. Admiral G1 sat down in her command chair and felt the weight of the last 12 hours crash down on her. Count our losses, she said quietly. The numbers came in slowly. Of the 40 ships that had come to Veloth Prime, only 18 remained combat-capable. 5 had been completely destroyed, including the 3 that made the final sacrifice. The rest were so damaged they would need months of repairs. 2,000 humans had died. Another 3,000 were wounded. It was the highest casualty count humanity had suffered since the last World War on Earth, over a century ago. What about ground forces? Admiral G1 asked. The report from the planet took longer. Sergeant Kyungmin's voice came through eventually, tired and rough. We held, Admiral. The Kravesh ground forces retreated when their fleet pulled back. We lost 300 soldiers, 400 wounded. Dalari casualties are still being counted. On the planet's surface, Kyungmin walked through the battlefield. The city was even more damaged now. Buildings that had survived the Kravesh occupation were destroyed in the fighting. Bodies, both human and Kravesh, lay everywhere. Medical teams moved among the wounded, trying to save who they could. Heejin worked at a field hospital, her hands stained with blood, both red and the purple-black of Kravesh. She had been operating for 10 hours straight. A young Dalari who had fought with them, one of Kessian's volunteers, was brought in with severe injuries. Stay with me, Hijin said, working quickly. You're going to be okay. But she knew the Dalari wasn't going to be okay. The injuries were too severe. She had to choose between spending an hour trying to save this one person or spending that hour saving 3 others who had better chances. It was the choice she had warned the Dalari doctors about. Now she had to make it herself. I'm sorry, she whispered to the dying Dalari. I'm so sorry. She moved to the next patient. Behind her, the young Dalari died alone, one of hundreds who would die that day despite surviving the battle itself. Kessian found Hijin later, after the worst of the wounded had been treated. The Dalari resistance leader looked different now. He had blood on his clothes and a haunted look in his eyes. Is this what it's like? Kessian asked. For humans? Every war? Hijin nodded slowly. Every single one. This is the price we pay. How do you live with it? We remember them, Hijin said. Every person who dies. We remember their names. We tell their stories. We make sure their sacrifice wasn't forgotten. In space, the surviving human ships began recovery operations. They searched for escape pods and survivors. They collected the remains of destroyed ships to bring home for proper burial. General Jeho arrived on the Indomitable. He had commanded the defense from a support ship in the rear. Now he walked through the damaged flagship and saw the cost of victory up close. He found Admiral Jiwan in what was left of her ready room, staring at a list of names. The dead, all 2,000 of them. We won, Jeho said, did we? Admiral Jiwan asked. Look at this list. 2,000 families who will never see their loved ones again. And for what? To save a species we didn't even know existed a month ago? To prove that someone in this universe cares about more than just power, Jeho said. Yes, Admiral, we won. Not just the battle. We won something more important. We showed that humanity keeps its promises. Admiral Jiwan looked at him with tired eyes. It doesn't feel like winning. It never does, Jeho said. But ask the Dalari if we won. Ask them if those 2,000 deaths were worth their freedom. Below them on Veloth Prime, Dalari were emerging from their hiding places. They saw human soldiers, exhausted and wounded, still working to help them. They saw ships in the sky, battered but victorious. They saw freedom for the first time in decades. Mirena stood in the city square where she had first met Sergeant Kyung Min. Around her, other Dalari gathered. Someone started singing, an old Dalari song about hope and darkness. Others joined in. The song grew louder and louder, thousands of voices joining together. The human soldiers stopped their work to listen. Many of them had tears running down their faces. They were too tired to stand straight, too hurt to smile. But they listened to the song and understood something important. This was why they fought. This was why some of them had died. Not for glory or conquest, but for this moment, for the sound of a freed people singing. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Veloth Prime. The story of humanity's victory had spread across the entire galaxy. In every corner of known space, conquered peoples whispered about the species from Earth who had challenged the mighty Kravesh Dominion and won. In the Galactic Assembly, a massive space station where different species met to discuss politics and trade, preparations were being made for an historic event. For the first time ever, humanity would attend. Representatives from dozens of worlds waited nervously to meet the warriors who had defeated the Kravesh. Ambassador Suman prepared in her quarters before the meeting. She wore a simple but elegant uniform that represented all of Earth's nations. Beside her stood General Jeho, who had returned from Veloth Prime carrying the weight of command and loss. Are you ready for this? Jeho asked. Suman looked at herself in the mirror. No, but I don't think anyone could be ready for this. They're going to ask us to be their protectors, to be the galaxy's army. I know, Suman said, and we're going to say no. Some won't like that answer. Some won't like us no matter what we say, Suman replied. Half the galaxy sees us as saviors. The other half sees us as potential conquerors. All we can do is show them who we really are. The assembly chamber was enormous, with seating for thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds. When Ambassador Suman and General Jeho entered, the entire chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to watch the humans walk to their designated platform. Suman looked around the chamber and saw fear in many faces. She also saw hope in others. The Dalari delegation, led by Mirena, watched with pride and gratitude. The assembly leader, a being from an ancient race called the Velthani, spoke first. Ambassador Suman of Earth, General Jeho of Earth, welcome to the Galactic Assembly. We have gathered to discuss humanity's actions at Veloth Prime and what they mean for the galaxy. Thank you for having us, Suman said, her voice amplified through the chamber's systems. A representative from the Kresh Alliance stood. Humanity destroyed a Krevesh fleet that had never been defeated. Your military capabilities are clearly superior to anything we've seen. We propose that Earth become the official protector of the Assembly, that you provide military support to any species threatened by the Krevesh or other aggressors. Other representatives voiced their agreement, but an equal number looked uncomfortable with the idea. Suman raised her hand for permission to speak. We appreciate the honor of your proposal, but we must decline. The chamber erupted in surprised conversation. Decline? The Kresh representative said. Why would you refuse such a position? Because we didn't come to Veloth Prime to gain power or authority, Suman explained. We came because someone asked for help. That's all. We're not interested in being the galaxy's army or police force. We're not interested in controlling others. A representative from a species that had been conquered by the Krevesh 50 years ago stood up angrily. You have the power to stop them. To free all of us. How can you refuse? General Jeho stepped forward. Because freedom isn't something that can be given. It's something you must fight for yourself. We helped the Dalari because they asked. Because they never stopped fighting in their own way. If we go around liberating every world, we become just another empire. Just another group forcing our will on others. But you're strong enough to do it, the representative insisted. You could save millions of lives. And in doing so, we'd make those millions dependent on us, Jeho replied. What happens when we're not there? What happens if Earth itself is threatened, and we need to call our ships home? No, we'll help those who ask for help. We'll stand beside those who want to fight for themselves, but we won't fight everyone's battles for them. The assembly leader called for order as the chamber grew loud with debate. When everyone was quiet again, he addressed the humans directly. What is it that Earth wants from the galaxy? Suman smiled. Nothing. We want nothing except to be left alone unless someone needs help. We don't want territory. We don't want tribute. We don't want subjects or servants. We just want to know that if someone cries out in the darkness, there's someone listening. Mirena stood from her seat. May I speak? The chair recognizes the Dalari representative, the assembly leader said. Mirena looked around the chamber. Before the humans came, we had given up hope. We thought we would die as slaves, that our children would never know freedom. Then we received a message from Earth. It said, help is coming. You are not alone. And they kept that promise. They traveled across the galaxy. They fought for us. They died for us. And when it was over, they didn't take control of our world. They helped us rebuild and then prepared to leave. She turned to look at Ambassador Suman. The humans aren't monsters trying to conquer us. They're not saviors demanding our worship. They're simply people who believe that everyone deserves to be free. And they're willing to fight to protect that belief. Another voice spoke up. It came from a representative of a species that bordered Krevesh territory. But what about the Krevesh? They'll strike back at Earth eventually. They won't forgive this defeat. Let them try, Jeho said calmly. Earth has been preparing for threats for thousands of years. We'll be ready. The assembly continued for hours. Some species wanted to ally with Earth immediately. Others wanted to stay neutral and avoid making the Krevesh angry. A few openly declared that they feared humanity as much as they feared the Krevesh. Finally, the assembly reached a decision. Earth would be offered a seat on the Galactic Council, but with no special military obligations. Any species could request Earth's help, but Earth would decide whether to respond based on their own judgment. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. After the assembly, Ambassador Suman met privately with Mirena in a quiet garden on the space station. They walked among plants from dozens of different worlds, all growing together in artificial soil. Will you really help others if they ask? Mirena questioned. Or was the Dalari rescue a one-time thing? Suman considered the question carefully. Honestly, I don't know. Our leaders will have to decide each case individually. We can't save everyone. We don't have unlimited resources or unlimited lives to sacrifice. But I think as long as Earth exists, we'll answer when people cry for help. It's in our nature. Even though it costs you so much? Even then, Suman confirmed. Those 2,000 people who died at Veloth Prime? They volunteered. Every single one knew the risks and went anyway. That tells you something about humanity. We're not fearless. We're terrified most of the time, but we do what needs to be done anyway. Mirena was quiet for a moment. We're building a memorial on Veloth Prime, for your dead and ours. We want to make sure future generations remember what happened, what you did for us. What are you going to write on it? Mirena smiled. We cried out to the heavens and the monsters of Earth heard us. They were not the monsters we feared. They were the monsters we needed. Suman felt tears in her eyes. That's beautiful. But we're not monsters. No, Mirena agreed. You're not. But to the Cravish, you are. To anyone who threatens the innocent, you are. And that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Monsters who protect the weak. Warriors who fight for peace. Killers who choose not to kill unless they must. Back on Earth, life continued. The planet knew about the Battle of Veloth Prime, but for most people it was just a story on the news. They didn't see the destroyed ships or the wounded soldiers. They didn't smell the smoke or hear the screams. Yunseo, a civilian journalist, had been given permission to interview some of the returning soldiers. She met with Sergeant Kyungmin in a quiet cafe near the military base. How does it feel to be home? Yunseo asked. Kyungmin looked at his coffee cup. Strange. Everything here is normal. People going about their lives. But up there on Veloth Prime, I saw things that will never leave me. Do you regret going? No, not even for a moment. But I wish the Dalari hadn't needed us. I wish the galaxy was kinder. What's next for you? Training, Kyungmin said. The Cravesh will attack again someday. Maybe not Veloth Prime, maybe not soon, but they will. And next time, humanity needs to be even more ready. Yunseo published her interviews. The article was read by millions of people on Earth. Some were proud. Some were scared. All of them understood that Earth had changed forever. They were no longer alone in the universe. They were no longer isolated. In the Cravesh Empire, Empress Vindra sat in her rebuilt throne room. She had survived the destruction of her flagship, but barely. The defeat had cost her politically as well as militarily. Other Cravesh leaders questioned her leadership, but Vindra was thinking about the future. These humans, she said to her advisors, they are unlike any species we've conquered. They don't fight for territory or resources. They fight for ideas, for concepts like freedom and justice. Ideas can't stop warships, my Empress, an advisor said. No, Vindra agreed, but they can make people willing to die. And people willing to die are the most dangerous enemy of all. She looked at a star chart showing Earth's location. We will not attack them directly. Not yet, but we will watch them, study them, learn their weaknesses, and when the time is right, we will show them that the Cravesh Dominion does not forgive, does not forget.